Okay, we're going to show you some fundamental beginners practice moves with the jaw. If you practice with a bokken jaw, especially in the warmup tradition, you probably have seen this movement before. And I've done it since I was 11 years old, starting with Tomita Sensei, Takei Tomita Sensei in Sweden in 1974. He was a student of Saito Sensei in Iwama, and before he moved to Iwama, he was a Nishio student during his university days in Tokyo. He moved to Iwama and he was Uchideshi together with Inagaki Sensei at the same time in the last couple of years where O-sensei was still alive. And Tomita received fourth dan from O-sensei before he eventually came to Sweden in, I believe it correctly, 1971. I began my practice in 1974 in his kids group in Stockholm. So we practice this even in the kids group. And I always wondered why we did this practice. Because it's not very martial, you can see it. It's not something we would use in a fight, really. It's more like a marching band throwing the jaw around, or something like that, where you would swing it around. But let's see now, the last few years, taking up and learning a little bit about the internal body and Aiki and what that means in our practice in Aikido. Suddenly, I have to re-evaluate many of the practices that we've been doing routinely, but not really understanding them, why we are doing certain things. So now I will try to explain this movement and the reason behind it. And I don't think many people really can really appreciate why we are doing this warm-up. So, how do we do it? First of all, the physical practicality to this. We want to start with parallel feet. And we don't want to swing the hips around, so we want to kind of fix the hip as we are in the same way we fix the feet parallel. So we're going to work on the central core coming up from the hip. So we're going to work on the spine rotation, but not on the hip rotation. We are not going to swing our hips around. So we're going to fix the hips. We're going to come down in the knees. In the internal language, we're going to bow our legs. That means, as in China they say, the horse stance. We're going to stand in the horse stance, but not in an exaggerated horse stance where you have a fat horse between your legs. But we're going to have a normal stance that is shoulder width or slightly more apart. We're going to be standing in the we're going to be standing in the stirrups. And so what that implies means in the old way in Japan, the stirrups were shaped like this, and your foot would sit only with the front of the foot in the shape like this. So it easily would come off if they would fall off the horse and not get caught in the stirrups. That means most of the weight was on the front of the foot, on the ball of the foot. Now, when we stand like this, it doesn't mean we're going to lift the heels, even though some Qigong practitioners do lift up their heel when they're standing, doing the standing postures. We want the whole foot down, but you can, the stirrup implies that most of the spring effect comes from the ball of the foot, in the center of the foot slightly. So that's where you're going to have the impact from the floor up. We want to bow our legs down so they're springy. So we don't sit on the horse, but we stand in the stirrups. Our legs are springy, so that's why this stance is called the horse stance. So that's the position you want. You're not going to turn the hips here, because then you start twisting out of alignment. So your legs going to be strong, springy, and strong like that. And that's partly the reason also why we do all these massage practices of hitting the legs as a warm-up exercise. That's not just massage. That's making sure that everything is pulled. You're pulling from center. You're stretching the fascia, and you're bowing it, creating a spring effect through the legs. Tailbone falls straight down, flattening the lower back. Usually can be done with the help of the breath, by breathing into the kidney areas and to the side areas, teaching you to expand the lower back, expand the sides, and structurally stabilize the midsection here, the hara section, which is completely all around the body here. Then we want to sit down in the hip crease, which is in Chinese, the kwa, the hip sockets here. We want to kind of sit down as sitting on the bar stool, which really is the same thing as standing in the stirrups, standing in the saddle in the horse's saddle. So we want to create this really good standing position while we're pulling up through the crown of the head. So we are pulling up and we are pulling down. So we're having this stand, almost like, it's like the standing Qigong position in China, where you're hugging the tree, or you simply just have the standing position here. So that's what we want to begin with. Then we're going to emphasize the spine. So if the hips are sitting straight here, we're going to see how much are we able to rotate the spine without rotating the hips. It's not going to be that much. We maybe going to be 10 degrees this way, maybe 10 degrees that way. But and in order to rotate it as much as you can, you want to come down in the hip crease, so you're able to rotate within the pelvic bowl. So you're actually turning here. Now you don't want to twist the upper body. And if I put it just to the side for a moment, if you hold your t-shirt like this, your breastbone want to align with the navel, and when you turn, all of that wants to turn together. So you don't want to twist the body, shoulders like this. This is usually traditionally said, your shoulders will move with the hips. But this point, actually, the shoulders is going to move with the torso. So you're actually going to turn the torso 10 degrees this way, if not more, 10 degrees this way, if not more. But you're going to retain the hip and the feet parallel and solid here. So we're exercising the strength of the vertical column. Now you can rotate the column while keeping your gaze straight forward. So ideally, what you're doing is you're having this vertical rod, as it were, or pillar or column. There are many ways of describing it, which we are just turning. But if you keep your head straight by turning the part below here, you're actually in one way creating a tension in the fascia that comes up through the body here like that. It's almost like you're turning a pencil, which you have rubber bands wrapped around it. And as you turn the pencil and you're holding the top still, the rubber band tightens as you simply turn the pencil. So in the same manner, by keeping your head straight forward, besides simply focusing on your target or focusing on the thing in front of you, that in martial terms would be your partner, your attacker, your adversary. That's going to give you also the possibility to create more of a tension, springiness that you want to create through connect the whole body, connecting the body through your fascia network or your fascia lines through the body. Now, if we are turning the column, we also want to coordinate the arms, the limbs up here, because if the column is turning, we can coordinate the turning of the arms. Now, many times we know this in Aikido, we are turning our wrists and hands a lot, but many times if we isolate simply the hands, the hand motion, it can be much done by the lower arm and the wrist, and not affecting the biggest part of the arm, which is the upper arm and the shoulder cuff. Now, if we focusing on rotating out of the shoulder, we're going to, of course, be much more powerful up here than down here. So we want to learn, and we see this in Aikido from, we have the Taino Henko hand open here, and we have the turn to the Kokyu extension here. So even at this point, you rotate open and you rotate close. You rotate open and you rotate close. So you have open and close, open and close. And you can recognize this pattern in striking arts where you use this. But now we understand that the focus is really opening, rotating back, and rotating in or closing the shoulder core, opening and closing. That can be done with the help of the spine, flexing it, bowing it, as it were. So that if you synchronize it, coordinate together with the spine, and of course the rest of the body, you will gain tremendous holistic strength. Now, if we are using the column to rotate out of it, if we coordinate the arms together with that rotation, then the vertical rotation is going to be transferred into a horizontal rotation through the arms. And it's almost like, if it's mechanically viewed, the cogs up here would automatically turn if you would turn the vertical. Now we have to kind of synchronize and coordinate the movement to get that going, because the power drives from the legs through the hips, through the vertical column out into your arms. So we can understand how the coordinating it correctly and synchronizing it is immensely helpful when we execute technique in order to transfer power through the body holistically. Now, understanding that and also realizing that this bowing and unbowing in the legs also exists in the arms. So we could rotate and unbow, rotate open and bow, rotate close and unbow. So we are bending, unbending, which is bowing and unbowing, to understand it. So you create tension, you connect the fascia into springy, holistic, high-key connected body. Now, what we do with the practice with this is, you can see it. I showed you in the beginning, I showed you the movement using both hands, alternating left and right hand. But that's not how we practiced when we began this. When we began this, we began practicing one hand, with one hand. So then we would come down in the same way on its opposite side, but when we come back on the same side, we would let the jaw travel between the index finger and the long finger, and it would make an extra turn before it come back into the hand, and then we would come back on this side, opposite side, we wouldn't do anything, but on the same side, we would let it drop in between the index finger, long finger, back into the hand. So it would become a one-handed motion, which we would practice like this. Now we would practice this, of course, with the right hand, and equally we would practice the same thing with the left hand. This is a little bit awkward because you're letting it run through your fingers, but with practice, you get the hang of it. Now, we also wonder why we would be doing this, because this is even less martial, even less stable. I mean, it doesn't take much to hit the jaw and make it fly out of my hand, yeah? But that's not really the practice. But if you slow down, you can see what my arm is doing. So if I take the jaw away, here I'm rotating in, here I'm turning and I'm rotating out. Here I'm turning, rotating in. And when I say rotating in, I'm really talking about up in the here. So it rotates in, turn the hand out, rotating it back out. So I'm exercising this motion, but not simply the arm. We need to use this part, because I simply could stand still and not move my column and just swing my arms around. Maybe I can isolate the practice in my forearm, in my upper arm, I mean. But what we really want to do is to have this stable foundation, rotate out of the torso coming up here, having that transfer perfectly into the rotation of the arm. So once you rotate here, you rotate almost like you rotate as much as you can into almost like it takes stop, because you're fixing your hip straight. So when you turn your torso, you're going to run in one way, you're going to run into your own hip socket here. So that's how come to this side. So now when you return this way, you rotate back into the other until you hit the other hip socket here, and you come up. So this is one way of learning the coordination between the vertical and the horizontal. Now, why with one hand? Why is that important? Because with one hand, you're rotating in, closing, and you're rotating out, opening. Here I rotate in, here I rotate out. Now, if I do it with both hands, I'm only rotating in, and then I change. And now I'm only rotating in, and now I change. So in one way, if we don't pay attention, I'm only emphasizing the in motion. I'm almost only emphasizing this. And where do we see this in Aikido? We see it in iriminage. Yeah, so that's the motion of iriminage coming this way. What is this other motion this way? The other way, kokyunage. Turn it around, make it iriminage. Kokyunage. Turn it around, iriminage. So these two functions exist in every technique we have in Aikido. So this is the basic practice of getting the body correct. Now, once you have trained it in both hands, and you're training the upper arm coordinating with a vertical axis, then when you understand that and you know that both arms are equally going to do the same thing, you're learning to rotate your column while you're rotating, emphasizing the upper arms. Not so much in the hands, not so much in the wrist. The wrist and lower arms are, of course, doing their job, but the power comes from the root of the arm, as the power of the legs comes from the root of the legs. And these roots are the hip sockets, the shoulder sockets, which are in Chinese called Kwa, K-U-A, Kwa. We have four Kwa, the four corners of the body, using the four extremities of the body, the hands and the feet. So that 4 plus 4 becomes 8 directions. Hey ho. So 8 directions, usually designated as the vertical 1, 2, the horizontal 3, 4, the what do you call this? 5, 6, 7, 8 is represented by a sphere. 8 would represent all directions or multiple directions or infinite directions, because we are speaking about a sphere. And that sphere is 8 times what? 8 times 1 fathom. 1 fathom is the length from my toes to my head, or from my fingertips to my fingertips. That's 1 fathom. 1 fathom in 8 directions indicates our sphere of motion, my reach, my physical playground, as it were, where I exist within. Wherever I go, that's the space I have. And that space is based on the column that is spoken about in the Kojiki, which is the oldest literature in Japan. It's the mythology of the birth of the universe and Japan as a nation. But esoterically, it's the birth of a body, of a man, of a woman, and of our capacity as a human being. This is now encapsulated in this practice. So you can see when we are doing this, don't do it small. So when you reach out, reach as far as you can. Reach as far as you can on the other side. Let it roll up into the hand. The hands are converging, meeting right in the middle. Don't separate the hands. They meet right together, skin to skin. Come back to as far forward as you can without leaning over. That means you're actually drawing the sphere around you. You're emphasizing the space around you with this exercise. Using the axis rotation, the vertical axis that you have transferred into the horizontal motion through the arms. Now, a good exercise, when you leave one hand free, it doesn't have to be useless. When you leave one hand free, it comes off on this side. You might as well grab your side of your fat reserves on your belly, and as the arm comes over on the side, you can help to generate or exercise the motion of the column to come this way. As you bring it up here and change again, you can now grab the side here and join the motion all the way over. You physically indicate to your mind what you want to do. And by doing this, you can exercise and probably stretch the angle that you're able to do. So there's not much, you don't have much angle. Remember, we're going to try to sit as much as possible, the hips straight, based on the fixed feet, yeah? But we have to come down in the hip crease, we have to come down in order to free up the rotation of the spine. Now, the rotation of the spine, you don't want to lean forward or lean back, because you need it to be really aligned vertically, so the rotation can happen without any friction. Any lean, like that's going to cause friction in the motion. So you want to have a spinning top, friction-free spinning top. Friction-free means fast. And then remember to keep your eyes straight forward. Keep your head straight forward. Of course, in the beginning, you might want to check where everything is. You might want to feel, so you might like that. But check yourself. You don't want to start swaying. You don't want to start moving the jaw around with the arm. This is bad. This is really bad. Don't do this. Remain upright. Come down in bow the knees, bow the legs. Here. And do it here, 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 here. And then this exercise, of course, will lead into Tai Sabak, will lead into Hasso Gaishi practices. Here, for example, here comes the Hasso, just here. Here comes the Hasso. You can see how it naturally leads into the Hasso Gaishi that we have here. The Hasso Gaishis that we have. So you can see this initial practice that we never understood why we did it has deep implications all the way back to the mythology origin of Japan. It's an esoteric practice, it's a physical practice, it's an internal practice, and we haven't even started to talk about Aiki yet. But you can see, if I may put this aside, you can see how these rotations is in every technique we do, because we are doing this rotation. And you can understand that this is the initial motion of understanding spirals. And spirals we have in coming for Ikkyu, coming back in Kokyunage, now coming through Shionage, coming through Iriminage. Going from Kokyu-ho into Ikkyu, Nikyu, Sankyu. Shionage. All of these exercises begin with this understanding of movement of the body. So, of course, you don't need the jaw to do this practice, but the jaw accentuates the practice if you do these exercises. And you will suddenly start to recognize it in the katas of karate, katas of chingi, Chinese boxing arts. You will recognize them in so many different arts. But it all comes from an understanding of connected body, and then understanding of the rotation and the spiraling, and then hopefully understanding through Aiki. Okay, thank you so much. Hope it helps.